What if the deadliest enemy you face is only in your mind? What if terror paralyzes you before danger ever strikes? And what if the snake you fear isn't the real threat at all? Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. This is The Snake by Ambrose Bierce, reimagined and retold in English.
Before we dive in, subscribe for your daily stories. Now, let's go.
The world, according to some men, is neatly sorted. Fish belong to water, birds to the air, beasts to the land. And snakes belong nowhere at all. That's what makes them dangerous. The snake, thin as a curse and restless as a bad thought, carries an ancient grievance. No legs, no mercy. It moves close to the ground, bitter about it, striking not from hunger, but from instinct. It bites because biting is what it knows. Venom isn't a weapon to it, it's simply a language. Everyone fears the snake. Everyone except the hog. The hog stands solid and unbothered, skin thick, eyes dull with confidence. When the snake coils and hisses, the hog doesn't flinch. He barely looks down. "Do your worst," the hog seems to say. "You'll gain nothing here." The snake pauses, offended. "I don't misunderstand you," it answers, not with words, but with motion. "I don't bite for profit. I bite because I am what I am." And with that, it strikes. There's a brief, foolish triumph, an invisible cheer, as the snake lunges again and again, proud of its own fury. But pride is slow, and the hog is not. In one sudden movement, brutal and final, the hog snaps shut. The snake thrashes once, twice, and then the argument is over. Where there was one creature full of anger, there are now two quiet halves cooling in the dirt. The hog chews, satisfied. "I have my own way of biting," he might say if he cared to explain himself. People have opinions about hogs. Some say they're meant only for the table. Others swear they'd rather live as one than dine on one. Opinions vary, but appetite, that's honest. A proper meal settles arguments better than philosophy ever could. Roasted meat, soft potatoes, something sweet on the side, something sharp to cut through the richness. A full plate reveals a clear mind. Yet the hog is not the strangest beast in this world. That honor belongs to the river monsters. They lie half-submerged, ridged backs breaking the surface like ancient scars. Their eyes float above the water, patient and unblinking. They do not rush, they wait. Time works for them. Old travelers speak of rivers so crowded with these creatures that the water itself seems to breathe. One such traveler, an uncle of the storytelling sort, a man who claimed to have seen every corner of the map, once told of a lazy afternoon near a distant riverbank. There, beneath the sun, lay what looked like a fallen tree. Dry, still, harmless. At least, that's what it seemed. "Chop that log into firewood," the uncle had said casually, already turning away, already thinking of other things. The order was simple. The object looked simple enough. Later, when the sun dipped and the air cooled, the uncle returned, expecting the crack of chopped wood, the smell of effort. Instead, he found silence. Inside the small shelter, someone slept, too calmly, too carefully wrapped in blankets. The room felt wrong. Quiet has many sounds, and this one carried fear in it. The uncle's voice broke the stillness. "Did you do what I asked?" Outside, by the riverbank, the log was gone, and the water moved, slowly, deliberately, as if something beneath it had just finished eating.
"I tried," the man said quietly. "I really did, but it came alive." Uncle Ned didn't even look up at first. When he did, his smile carried that sharp, lazy edge that meant he didn't believe a word of it. "Oh, of course," he said. "And let me guess, it suddenly grew arms and legs, too?" "Yes, sir," the man replied after a beat. "One on each side." That earned a dry laugh. "Well then," Uncle Ned went on, leaning into the joke, "I suppose it bloomed next, flowers and all." The man nodded, serious as stone. "Yes, sir. Opened wide, 3 feet across, like a flower greeting the morning sun." That slowed Uncle Ned down, just a little. "And did it put down roots?" he asked, still clinging to his sarcasm. The man frowned, searching his memory. "I was a bit shaken," he said at last. "Only thing I recall it taking was my leg." There are men who would swear revenge after a story like that. Men who'd promise steel and fire if a river beast dared reach for someone they loved. They'd talk big about swords and lessons taught the hard way, about brave boys who fear nothing and win every fight they're ever dragged into. But Uncle Ned didn't argue. He listened, because this wasn't the first time the wilderness had tried to make a liar out of him. Once, not so long ago, he'd been walking through the tall grass when something fast and thin exploded from the shadows. A sharp pain burned into his hand. By the time he saw what it was, the creature was already gone, vanishing as if the earth itself had swallowed it. Venom works quickly on the imagination. Uncle Ned ran. He ran as though death were already counting his steps behind him. Every breath became a prayer, every stride a confession. He only wanted to make it home, somewhere familiar, to meet whatever waited for him with dignity. Then he saw a man by the roadside, calm, still, almost peaceful. Wrapped around the man's bare arms were 3 snakes, long and furious, their bodies knotted tight, their fangs striking again and again. The bites were real, the danger unmistakable, and yet the man did not scream. He held all 3 tails in one steady grip, as if the chaos belonged to him, as if fear had simply decided not to touch him that day. Uncle Ned slowed. The pain in his hand throbbed, his heart hammered, but something colder settled in his chest, the realization that terror is not shared equally. Some men run from a single wound, certain the end is near. Others sit quietly by the road, holding death itself by the tail. Uncle Ned stopped running. He looked at the man by the road, calm, steady, surrounded by living coils, and for the first time since the bite, fear loosened its grip. "Looks like we're both marked," Uncle Ned said, breathing hard. "If this is the end, that we don't give it away cheap. Let's make them earn it." He shrugged off his coat, stepped forward, and seized the writhing tails with both hands. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the man smiled. "Much obliged," he said easily. "With your help, this should go quicker." Uncle Ned froze. Quicker for what? The man tightened his grip, calm as a craftsman at work. "There's a gathering tonight. I promised my wife something special. Been trying for half an hour to weave these fellows into a proper necklace. Dinner decoration, you might say. Trouble is, they won't hold still." Uncle Ned stared at the snakes, at the steady hands, at the complete absence of fear. "You mean to tell me," he said slowly, "those creatures aren't deadly?" The man shrugged. "How would I know? I've never eaten one before." That answer stayed with Uncle Ned long after the road disappeared behind him. Years later, when I was still a boy, my father tested me with an old lesson. "Have you heard the story," he asked, "of the kind man who found a frozen snake, warmed it against his chest, and was bitten for his mercy?" "Of course," I said. "Everyone's heard that one." My father nodded. "Then remember this," he said. "Kindness isn't owned by one side alone. Once a snake found a man half dead from cold and warmed him too, curled around him, shared its heat." I thought about that for a moment. "And when the man recovered?" I asked. My father smiled, slow and knowing. "Well," he said, "he digested." Once, at a traveling exhibition, there lived a snake so enormous it drew crowds before it ever moved. The handler liked spectacle, so for the audience's benefit, he lowered a dog into the enclosure and announced, far too cheerfully, that dinner had arrived. The dog studied the snake for a long, thoughtful moment. "That," the dog seemed to think, "is the largest sausage I've ever laid eyes on. No sensible creature could finish that in a single sitting." Time passed. Hunger argued louder than caution. When the dog had finally disappeared, neatly, impossibly, down the snake's endless body, the snake gave a slow, satisfied blink. Whoever invented self-filling sausages, it reflected privately, had no affection for dogs. Another snake at the same show developed a different habit. One morning, the handler noticed a blanket missing from its cage. He cursed thieves, suspects, fate, everything except the obvious. A replacement blanket was laid down, and this time he watched closely. Sure enough, the snake began to swallow it, carefully, deliberately, tucking the cloth away inch by inch. The handler sighed, fetched a pillow, and tossed it into the cage. "If you're making a bed inside yourself," he said, "you might as well do it properly. I'll bring you something warm later, and we'll have you comfortable. Just tell me, what time should I wake you in the morning?" Snakes eat what they're built to eat and strike without gratitude. That's their nature. Dogs, by contrast, earn trust even when they shouldn't. The difference matters. Snakes also have a habit of leaving themselves behind. Once a year, they peel free of their own skin, stepping out of yesterday as if it were nothing more than a worn coat. I saw it happen once, standing beside a butcher whose waistline suggested he'd never skipped a meal in his life. When the snake finished, new and shining, its old self lying empty on the ground, the butcher studied it with professional interest. "So far, so good," he said thoughtfully. "But tell me something, my fine fellow. How do you plan on removing what's inside without a knife?" The snake, of course, did not answer. Some transformations aren't meant to be completed. Some snakes kill with silence. Others announce themselves to the sky. The boa squeezes the breath out of its problems. The rattlesnake, on the other hand, turns fear into sound, shaking the air until even the clouds seem to listen. When I asked Uncle Ned what snakes were actually for, he paused, as if the question had caught him unprepared. "Honestly, Johnny," he said at last, "I had no hand in their creation. I only speak well enough to stir crowds and flood the land with opinions. Your respectable father claims that's no different from making snakes, but he's convinced the universe runs on opposition." Then Uncle Ned smiled, the way he always did before telling a story that would explain nothing and everything at once. "I can tell you this," he said. "Back at the beginning, before things got complicated, the snakes were gathered together. Adam named them one by one, proud of his work. When he was finished, he lifted his arms and said, 'Go now, spread across the empty places of the earth, multiply.' The snakes flowed away in every direction, except one. It stayed behind, motionless, head bowed. Adam noticed. "And why aren't you moving?" he asked. The snake lifted its eyes. "With respect," it said, "I'm willing to go, but I can't multiply. You named me an adder. That's what I am." Uncle Ned let that hang in the air. Later, I asked him about rattlesnakes, why they carry warning bells at the end of their tails. He said immediately, "That's just what idle minds choose to see." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "What people call rattles are nothing more than exposed bones, leftover pieces of a spine that never learned how to hide." According to Uncle Ned, the rattlesnake was born so unfortunate in appearance that it frightened itself. Whenever it tried to approach another creature for company, everything fled. Loneliness became its constant companion. Then came the day all snakes were ordered to shed their skins. One snake slipped cleanly out of its old self. Another did the same. But the rattlesnake, ashamed of what it revealed, backed into the abandoned skin of another, hoping to disappear inside it. The disguise didn't fit, so it shortened the skin where it could and left part of itself exposed. Those hard joints at the end of its spine were all that remained uncovered. And when the rattlesnake trembled, and it trembled often, they knocked together and made noise. Fear, Uncle Ned explained, is what shakes the rattlesnake most, especially the sudden shadow of a barefoot boy about to step where he shouldn't. "So remember this, Johnny," Uncle Ned said gently. "If there's room to walk around, do so. The rattlesnake is already afraid enough." "And now," Uncle Ned said, settling back as if preparing a confession, "I'll tell you about something just as dangerous as any snake." He meant whiskey. The three of us, myself, another fellow, and a doctor, were camped deep in the forest. The doctor, cautious by nature, had brought a jug of whiskey along, insisting it was strictly medicinal. Snake bites, he said, emergency use only. One afternoon, the doctor and I went out hunting. When we returned, the camp was quiet in a way that never means anything good. The fellow lay inside the tent, motionless, soaked in drink, breathing so shallow it barely counted. He was beyond sense, beyond shame, hovering at the edge of something final. "Johnny, there's nothing more distressing than seeing a man reduced entirely to himself." I panicked. I wailed. I behaved exactly as panic demands. The doctor, meanwhile, sat down and stared at the ground, thinking. Then, suddenly, he stood up. "I've got it," he said. "I've got it." Before I could ask what it was, he vanished into the trees. He returned carrying a rattlesnake, pinned carefully at the end of a long split stick. Without ceremony, without hesitation, he brought it close to the drunk and let nature take its course. Once, twice, again. I won't pretend it made sense. I wouldn't ask you to believe it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. But those bites cut straight through the fog of whiskey. The man sprang upright, sober in terror if nothing else, and fled into the forest like his soul had just remembered it had an appointment. Last I heard, he survived just fine, and now holds a respectable position somewhere far from snakes and tents. Naturally, I asked Uncle Ned what became of the rattlesnake. "That," he said slowly, "is the saddest part of all. They released it outside the tent. The moment it touched the ground, it twisted itself into a knot so tight it looked impossible. Then it unraveled, balanced briefly upside down, waved its tail at the sky, and behaved as though it had been promoted to royalty. After that," Uncle Ned said, "it disappeared, quite pleased with itself." "Some people eat snakes," Uncle Ned concluded thoughtfully. "That may be their way. As for me, I'll take a different kind of feast. Something baked, something spiced, something warm enough to remind you that life doesn't always have to fight back. Add dessert, add seconds, add more than sense would recommend. because there are many ways to survive the wilderness, and not all of them require venom.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.